Hey, Small Axe community. Welcome back to another episode of this podcast. I am so excited because today's guest is going to blow your mind. He has raised an incredible amount of money, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But let me read a little bit about him. You're going to love this guy, Brad Blazar, formerly the CEO of a small oil company. Brad is a highly sought after speaker on the subject of raising capital, having raised more than 2 billion, yes, billion with a B, dollars. Today, he mentors others around the world as part of a global coaching business on how to raise funds from high net worth investors to build, buy, and scale business or fund a special project like real estate. Having worked alongside many large real estate syndicators and top financial services, he's considered an expert on raising private money. With an extensive network of family offices, advisory firms, and broker dealers, he has closed the largest multi-million dollar transactions for multiple leading real estate firms like 9 million, 7.5 million, 5 million for SmartStop Self Storage, a national operator or self storage assets, in addition to 11 million for USAllianz. As a real estate investor himself, he got his start purchasing, rehabbing, and renovating over a dozen single family properties with a portfolio value of over 3.5 million. Today, he owns interests in multifamily, self storage, and land conservation easements, in addition to owning Five Star Capital, which is a real estate investment firm that syndicates real estate and invests alongside others. As the author of 3 books, his first book, On the Wings of Eagles, Learn to Soar in Life, quickly became a top rated #1 read for entrepreneurs on a large literary blog based in the UK. Additionally, Brad's podcast was ranked recently as the second highest ranked show to assist people in coping with COVID-19. He has shared the stage as a speaker alongside other well known thought leaders and celebrities like boxing legend Floyd Mayweather, Shark Tank's Kevin Harrington, Rich Dad Poor Dad co author Sharon Lechter, well known best selling author Dr. John Maxwell, and many more. Recently knighted, Sir Brad is a philanthropist and uses his noble title to bring awareness and donates a portion of his business revenue to MD Anderson Cancer Research and feels more needs to be done to fuel cancer research and bring a cure to the world. I need to stop. I need to get Brad on this show. Hey, Brad, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, what's up, Nico? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. For those listeners out there, we are recording on Veterans Day. It is a wonderful day up here in New York. How are you doing down in Texas?
I'm doing great. Down here where I am, we're known as Space City, so we're doing awesome.
Oh, beautiful. Hey, Brad, I went high level on your background. Maybe you can kind of give us a little bit more context about how you got to where you are today.
No, it's a real unique story. I'll tell you. I certainly didn't plan to land here. I was actually going to school with the ambitions of being an architect, and while I was in school, got sidetracked, like a lot of us do. Responded to an ad in a local paper up in Austin, Texas, and went to work for a small oil company. And I was 21 years old. I mean, I was a kid, man, just still going to school, chasing girls. And I don't know what the CEO saw in me. I guess I just was a, cocky little kid. He said, man, I want to teach you how to get on the phone and build trust and build relationships and raise capital. I said, great. And so they basically taught me a system. They taught me some skills, taught me how to build trust, build relationships. And while I was a kid, 12 hours a week, 15 hours a week between class after school, was making close to 6 figures. And I just sat there and I'm like, what in the heck am I doing here in school? Trying to graduate with a piece of parchment paper that's going to put me out in the workforce to make 60, 80. I'm making more than that. And hell, I'm having fun working 12 to 15 hours a week. Like, I wonder how much I could make if I really devoted myself to this. And so without my parents really knowing what I was doing, one day I just made the decision to turn my back to my studies, went to work doing it full time and, started raising more money, went to work for a second oil company. Turned out that the second guys were just a bunch of crooks. And so I quit. And all the investors that I had worked with looked at me and they're like, they never met me. I mean, I was doing all this on the telephone back then. They're like, what are you going to do now? And I said, "I don't know." They're like, "Why don't you just do the same thing, man, but just do it with honesty?" Like, right. I didn't know the first thing about drilling an oil well. I'll be honest, I didn't know a damn thing about building a business. I just knew how to raise money. And so I started getting on the phone, reaching out to investors, hired a couple people, taught them what I was taught. And over the course of about 10 years, Nico, we built a pretty nice business, raising millions of dollars a month, drilling for oil and gas in Texas and Oklahoma, Louisiana. And, after about a decade, the landscape, or I guess the outlook for the industry really changed. And so I just realized, I got to adapt. And I made the decision over the course of a couple months to slowly just collapse the business. We never had to file for bankruptcy because we had, and decided to go back to school. And so I went back to college, came out, and really just wasn't happy, man. Like I didn't want to go to work in corporate America.
Mm.
And, a lot of people that wanted to hire me were offering me salaries that was close to what I used to make in a good month. And one day I was watching TV, and this is really how it all came about. And Steve Harvey was on stage, and he was saying to his audience, I believe everybody here in my audience has a unique talent. It's what I call your something special. And he said, the problem is most of you will never find out what that is. And that's why we have so much unhappiness. That's why people don't enjoy the work they do, yada, yada. But he said, if you can find out what that one special talent is and create content around it and deliver it to the world where it impacts lives, it transforms people, man, it's a magical thing. And about 2 weeks later, I was sitting there smoking a cigar, drinking a bourbon on my back patio. I kid you not, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, holy crap. My God, my talent is I know how to raise money better than anybody I've ever met. And so I entered the industry in financial services, basically aligning myself and working alongside some of the biggest financial services companies in the world, some of the largest real estate sponsors. Today, these guys manage billions of dollars on the platforms that I built. And, fast forward, I've raised over $2 billion from about every source you can fathom, from investors, family offices, insurance companies, trusts, all the big institutional type investors. Raised 50 million out of a fund in Israel. So I'm known around the world as a $2 billion guy. And, today we run, I think, the largest global platform with students in about 10 countries, teaching people how to do this because it is something I believe every entrepreneur needs to understand and needs to master.
Yeah, Brad, phenomenal story, man. I really resonate with that. I love your passion for what you do. I love the fact that you found something that really clicked with you and that you
So,
were able to share with the world. Steve Harvey is the man. His story is great as well.
yeah.
And just phenomenal stuff, man. So are you focusing on real estate at this point?
I am absolutely. Yeah. So I started my real estate journey back around 2005, 2006. It all started with Russ Whitney, who I've actually had the pleasure of meeting in person a couple times. He's part of a mastermind group that I'm very active in. And I, went up to him and I shook his hand. I said, man, it's because of your tapes and your damn books that I am who I am today, Russ. We got a good laugh at it, but I am. I started in real estate like, most people, just single family guy doing subject twos, rehabbing, renting them out, doing the Burr method. And I just got to a point as a landlord where I won't say burnout, but I was just ran ragged. Houston is a huge spread out city. And I went about it real haphazardly. I didn't have a plan. I was just so excited to get a deal. I didn't really care where it was. And so I found myself sometimes, spending 3 to 4 hours in the car, like meeting a contractor that was working on one of my properties, and then literally driving about an hour and a half to go meet a tenant or a prospective tenant, and then going all the way across the city to meet somebody else. And I just said, man, there's got to be a better way. And so as I started liquidating and selling out of my single family, I started taking advantage of 1031 strategies and scaling up. And then, of course, the work I was doing in the industry allowed me to secure interest in a lot of deals that I was raising capital on. But yeah, but today, basically, I am an investor. We still raise capital. Our focus largely has been in the multifamily space. But in addition to that, my passion is really to teach people how to create wealth, how to use other people's money, and more importantly, just how to work the investor community.
Yeah, well, look, I'm going to be honest with you here. It is not my strong suit. I have very limiting beliefs when it comes to raising capital, and I tend to I tend to say too much or too little or get too nervous. And the majority of my listeners struggle with similar realities of where they are jumping into the business of multifamily, trying to raise capital for their first deal or two, and they're just falling short.
Mhm.
So you have a capital school. Now, what is this capital school about? And who is it really tailored for?
Man, it's tailored for anybody and everybody that wants to learn how to attract and raise capital. I mean, here's my thing. I've been a business coach before I was, quote, a capital coach. And in talking to literally hundreds of people, I find that everybody has a dream for more abundance. Man, they want to open a restaurant, they want to start a business, they have a business, they want it to scale. And I'll say, Nico, man, like, how long have you had this burning desire to do something big in life? And for a lot of people, it's a long ass time, as long as they can remember.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
what's the one thing that's been holding you back? And the funny thing is, for most people, it's not the fear. It's the fact they just don't have the money to even get started. And so, like Steve Harvey said, I realized that with my skills and my knowledge, if I could become the catalyst and teach people how to attract and raise capital, then I can make hundreds of people's dreams become reality. And I think that's part of our success. We've got testimonials, we've got letters from people that have raised anywhere from a few hundred all the way up to tens of millions. But I think the real thing here is most people grow up in an atmosphere where we're largely taught, it's bad or it's improper to quote, go borrow money. We don't want to go and ask our friends for money because then basically we're giving them the impression that we're dead ass broke. So they don't really teach this in any school or any university. But what you have to realize is that on any given day, you, for the most part, are surrounded with all the money that you'd ever need to do anything in life that you desire. They're called investors. And you just have to be attuned in how to approach investors or how to pique their interest or to have some knowledge as to what to say to people to even get that discussion started. I'll give you an example. One of my good friends who's a very successful real estate entrepreneur himself, when he's out at a networking or he meets people and he's asked, "What is it you do for a living?" He says, "I'm a freedom consultant." And he gets this weird look like, he's like, "I'm a freedom consultant." You're probably wondering what the hell that means, right? And the people are like, "Well, yeah." He says, "I teach people how to create financial freedom through the ownership of real estate. Would you have an interest?" And I mean, boom, like, yeah. Like, man, that's exactly what I'm looking for. But you see, that one response is so out of the left field as it relates to nobody's ever heard of a freedom consultant before. Like, what's that? But the way he positions it opens doors. It creates the dialogue with people that have money that are looking for what? A lifestyle, to have more enjoyment, to be passive and get that mailbox money, as I call it. So a lot of it is really just understanding what to say, but then it's also understanding that one of the biggest mistakes we always see people make is talking about the investment or pitching the investment way too early in the process. That's probably, I think, the biggest mistake most people make, Nico, is you have to understand that today we live in a very distrustful world. I mean, we've had the Bernie Madoffs, we've had big, huge companies like the Enrons and the WorldComs go belly up. People lost hundreds of thousands, millions in their 401ks. So everybody just has this general level of distrust. So if you're trying to talk to somebody that you really don't have an existing relationship with, and you're trying to pitch them on an investment out of a courtesy to you, they're going to say, "Yeah, they're going to smell, send me the stuff. I'll take a look at it." But when it comes time to close them, they're going to become very evasive. They're going to skirt the issue. And it's not that it's a bad deal. It's just that they don't trust you enough to move forward in that process. So I've perfected a couple of techniques over, many years of raising hundreds of millions. And I tell people, look, it's a four-step process. There's an introductory, let's get to know each other call or meeting. Then there's a little follow up. It's kind of like dating. Then you ask that person a very important question. I call it the validation phrase. And basically, what they're saying very subconsciously is, yes, I trust you enough, Nico. Put me on your list and call me when you've got something you think I can get excited about. And so on that third call, you're calling them because now you've got a deal and you pitch. And then hopefully on the fourth or fifth conversation or meeting, you're closing. You're getting a commitment, they're writing a check, and then you just rinse and repeat the process. But there is definitely a process to this that works. And what I explain to people that want to learn how to really master this is you have to approach it with intention. You just can't go about it haphazardly and think you're going to have success raising money. You've got to have the systems. You've got to have the structure. You need a CRM system. You need a way of tracking activity. You need a way basically of moving people forward in this process. I love what Grant Cardone says. Man, money follows motion. People got to know you before they will flow you. Those are all true statements. But you got to realize this is more of a marathon than it is a sprint.
Brad, phenomenal insight and information there. I truly appreciate this conversation, and my eyes are wide open. So thank you. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the systems and processes. Do you help potential students set up those systems and processes?
Oh, absolutely. You bet. We don't create the LLCs or open bank accounts, but we definitely mentor on how to structure the business properly for success. It's like building a house. You got to have the foundation. So the first thing is, you have a name for the business. Great. Come up with a name and then go get an LLC so that you can protect yourself. Then let's go ahead and get a tax identification number. Let's get the bank accounts. Let's create basically the substance of a business so that now you can move forward to quote the next steps in the process. And then for those students that really need help, we have a turnkey solution to creating a pitch deck, putting together the entire offering memorandum, which is, of course, the private placement document that gives people disclosure, discussed all the potential risks. We put together the investment summary sheet for those that need help with that. Or for those that don't, they can come in at a much lower entry. But we really are set up now to provide almost anything and everything somebody needs from A to Z, whether they just want to learn how to raise capital, whether they want to learn how to launch a fund, whether they want to learn how to get into multifamily and do syndications. All of those things are covered for the right person. And here's what I'll tell you. One of the things I think that makes us stand out from some of the others in the space is a lot of people that are in the multifamily industry get to a point where they've had a level of success. They've raised a decent amount of money and they're thinking, they're going, man, I'm sick and tired of picking up checks for 50 and $100,000. Like I need to figure out how to get into the family office space. Or I want to create distribution with broker dealers and investment advisory firms. Great. We can teach you how to do that too. Why? Because I've done it all. But I think that for most people that want to get into the multifamily space, the best thing to do is to start as a co-GP, partner with somebody else so that you can start building your database of investors. And after you've done that two or three times, then go out on your own after you've got a sense of knowing what to do before you get out over the end of your skis. What I see a lot of people trying to do is bite off a lot more than they can chew. And that's not a good approach to any business.
I totally agree, and that is again phenomenal advice. And I recommend the same to people, because I started that way as well as a co-GP, and finally now getting on 2 deals, now finally getting into my own deal and leading this one. But still, the capital raising aspect has been a challenge for me, so I seek out co-sponsors to help me with this raise, and I don't love it. I don't love the process. Would you work with somebody like me if I wanted to join this program? And if so, like, what would you recommend for somebody like me who doesn't feel capable of of capital raising?
Yes, absolutely. We do that. We have a community, and a lot of our students have partnered up. They become co-GPs. They help each other. Certainly, that is very active within our community, as I'm sure it is with most of the other people out there. Um, but I think a lot of it really just also comes with confidence. It's the realization that when you're talking to somebody that is of significant wealth, you have to talk to them as an equal. And I think one of the struggles a lot of people have is you kind of look up to this person and you maybe come across as somebody that's speaking from desperation. Yes, you got a deal. Yeah, you got to come up with the money. But I'll be real honest with you. I've been doing this for a long time now, and I'll tell you, you don't see it. But that other investor, man, they're like Spider-Man. They got that spidey sense going. They can see the desperation. They can hear it in your voice. They can see it in the body tone. And so the attitude that I try to teach all my students to basically adopt is some will, some won't. So what? Who's next? It's like you got to give that person the impression that, man, this is what I do every day. Dude, like I talk to big time people just like you. For me, a yes or no is a hell of a lot better than a maybe. So just tell me, are you in or you out? It ain't going to hurt my feelings. I got other people to talk to. And if you take kind of that laissez-faire attitude, where, it's really just nonchalant, people are going to open up their checkbook. They're going to write checks. And I think a lot of it also is a little bit of cockiness, a little bit of confidence, maybe, to say it, maybe a little bit of arrogance. And I'll share a true story. The word close means to bring closure, right? So you're bringing closure to a decision. You're getting somebody to reach a decision. And a lot of times investors won't move forward in the process. And maybe it's because of, like you said earlier, the limiting belief about just investing in an area that they're somewhat uncertain about. And so when I was in the oil business, I had a very wealthy doctor. I mean, I knew the guy was rich. He flew out on a private jet he owned. We drove around for a couple of days. Guy's wearing more gold on his wrist than most celebrities, but he just wouldn't invest. And so one night I was sitting there. He was in California. I was, of course, in Texas. So I was in my office working the West Coast. And I just said, Dr. Schnackman, it takes two things to invest in an oil well. He said, what? I said, big brass balls, dude, and lots. And which you don't you have? And I was a 25-year-old little cocky kid. And when I said that, I like bit my tongue and I'm like, but there was a pause. And after what seemed like forever, he said, tell me again how much 3 units in your program cost. I said, doctor, go get your checkbook. Let's fill out the paperwork. Welcome aboard. Most people would not have the balls to say something like that. But you see, sometimes that's all you need to do to just move that person forward and nudge them a little. I call it getting them off the fence. But in reality, that's what it took to get this guy to write a six-figure check. And he became one of our best investors because we ultimately had success for him. But you've got to realize that most people lack closing skills. I call it you're selling flirt. Quit flirting with the dude and start closing. Ask them to write the check. Ask them how much they see themselves investing. Because if you start closing, guess what? You'll start getting people to open up their checkbook. Don't go into this with an assumptive attitude that people are going to come to you and say, well, this sounds great. Like, what's the next steps in us working together? It happens, but maybe it only happens 1 out of every 10 times. The other 6, it's you got to be asking them, right? You got to be closing. And so if you understand that you've got to be closing people to ultimately invest, what you'll find, Nico, is that you'll get much greater conversion. People will start asking questions like, well, tell me, what does 3 units in the program look like? Or, how much is left? Or, what's the biggest check I can write? And you'll take your capital raising to a whole nother level. I tell people, look, if you're raising money now, the easiest way to raise more is just ask for bigger checks. If asking people to write checks for 50 or 100, or in your literature, it says our minimum investment is $50,000, start at 250. It's easy to work down, but if you start at 50, it's real hard to work up. So, if it says in your literature, our minimum investment is 50,000, ask the investor, hey, Nico, how much of this do you see yourself taking today? You want to start with 250? You like 200 or you want to do 150? And maybe they'll say 200. Great. It's a lot better than saying 50, 75, or 100. So I always ask for just big amounts. The worst thing that can happen is the guy's like, I can't afford to write a check that much. Oh, okay, well, great. What are you comfortable with?
Yep.
And then you just go with that.
This is wonderful, man. Now, do you provide any hand holding for people that are I'm not saying hop on a call with an investor that is, on the fence, but is there like some sort of like coaching or one-on-one coaching that you provide or monthly coaching? How does it work with somebody that wants to talk with
Yeah.
somebody like you?
All the above. So we have, varying levels of capital school, I guess you call it, just like a lot of the other mentors do. And some of it, of course, is more the less expensive group coaching community, which is great for a lot of people. You still get a lot. You get access to me every week on a group coaching call. You get access to our Facebook community. You get access to the online platform that hosts all the programs, all the materials, all the PDFs. And then above that, we do have a higher level. We refer to that as Capital School Platinum. What Platinum really does is it elevates the relationship. It gives you direct proximity to me where I now become that mentor. And so you and I are talking on a bi-weekly basis, one-on-one, coaching you, I'm mentoring you for the first few months of the relationship to really maximize everything that you do have access to. And then you also have access to our once a month mastermind call, which is a mastermind community that we've created with all of our platinum and our elite students that are, again, one level above that. And then our elite program is for people really that want, again, me as a coach and a mentor, but they want us to really create and draft for them their offering documents. I mean, if you go talk to a lawyer, you'll find out that hiring an attorney is a very expensive process. Well, here's the thing. We do exactly the same thing they do because most offering memorandums are created with a template. We've got access to all those things. And then we have two attorneys that are on retainer with us that we can work closely with, but we can keep the cost way, way down. And the best part about it is, in addition to the offering memorandum, we also create your pitch deck and we also create the investment summary sheet. So you basically get a turnkey, I guess what you call package, which is the investor package, which is what you need if you want to launch a fund or, do a much larger raise, which is really next level stuff. But for a lot of people, they're like, man, yeah, that makes sense. I need all those things if I'm going to launch a fund. So let's move in that direction and let's get started.
Oh man, 2 weeks ago. So I
Yeah.
have a capital raiser who 2 weeks ago he's going to bring in a good amount of money to this deal, and he decided last minute a couple of weeks ago to do it as a fund, to come in as a fund, and I connected him with my attorney. But had I known this, we could have just went right to this direction. And
Absolutely.
you know what, Brett? I'm really seeing this as an opportunity for everybody in the real estate space where I play, right? Not only the capital raisers, but as a general partner, as the lead acquisitions manager, right? I can go network with people that are raising capital. If I fall short, I have access in this group that you provide to other capital raisers. That is
Absolutely.
incredible. Let me talk a little bit, or maybe you can talk a little bit about widening or expanding our investor database for the novice and then for the more seasoned capital raiser.
Well, I mean, there's so many ways to get in front of potential investors. I think today with the regulatory environment that changed a few years ago with the Jobs Act that allows people now to advertise, you see a lot of people advertising on Facebook or LinkedIn or on Instagram, as long as the investors end up being accredited using the 506C structure or some of the other exemptions. But, being able to advertise for investor capital, I mean, come on, how beautiful of a thing is that? You do still have to be a little bit careful. But the other thing is, I tell people, look, you can buy lists of accredited investors. There are companies out there that work within the quote financial advisory industry. If you're a stockbroker, you're a financial planner, you're trying to build your book of business. A lot of those guys will go and they'll buy a list of very affluent, high net worth households. Me personally, I get a shitload of that direct mail. Hey, join us at this fancy steakhouse and learn about whatever, Social Security or, how to enjoy your retirement years. Where do you think they got my name? They got it off a mailing list. So that's another avenue. You can do direct mail. You can host events to pitch your deal. But I tell people also just go to Google and Google the investment clubs that are in an area close to where you live. And I don't care if they're meeting to discuss the stock market. I don't care if they're meeting to discuss crypto. I don't care if it's a real estate networking group. By definition, everybody at that club is saying, I'm an investor. And as you get to meet people and they realize, hey, Nico's in real estate, I got to diversify my investments. I'm over here talking stocks, but I realized the benefit of maybe owning some real estate for the tax benefits and for the passive income. Before you know it, you're having conversations with people that you're meeting in other communities. That's another way. One of the out of the box approaches, and I've actually written an article about this, that if you go to my LinkedIn page, you'll see under my article section, is brilliant. And it actually works really well.
Mhm.
I've raised millions of dollars and I've had students that were skeptical because of the limiting beliefs they did it. And they call me and they're like, holy crap, this actually worked. But imagine this, in every major city in the United States, there is what I call that pocket of richness. It's where the big ass mansions are. And everybody that lives in that little pocket of wealth is rich, rich, rich. So, for example, here in Houston, man, we have a little part of town called River Oaks. And then we have another area called Piney Point Village, Bunker Hill, Tanglewood. All these houses are $3 million mansions. People got Rolls Royces, they got maids, butlers, etc. And so I said to myself, how do I get into the front door of all of these houses and get to know all these super rich people? And then it dawned on me one day. I was driving through one of these little neighborhoods and there was a Starbucks. And I said, my God, that's my secret. So this was many years ago. I was working with a financial advisor that was looking to grow his book of business. And I said, man, I don't know if this is going to work, but if you're open, let's try it. And so we went to that Starbucks in that little neighborhood surrounded by multi-million-dollar houses. We got there about 8 o'clock, and in the morning, man, all the Porsches, all the Rolls Royces, all the big Mercedes S500s were driving up. People were parking there, coming in. And so we went in there and I went up to the lady at the cash register. And after we ordered, I said, hey, here's my American Express card. Nico and I are going to go sit over there in the corner and watch for me. When I go like this and wave, you tell everybody that comes up here that the order that they want to order today, whatever it is, it's complimentary and it's compliments of the two guys sitting right over there. And you just point to us like this. And so, we went over there, we're sitting, I wave. And, some guy comes up, he's all suited up and he ordered a latte or whatever. And she said, oh, sir, it's compliments day. The two guys sitting right over there. Now, naturally, everybody's going to go like, what in the heck's going on? Right. So, they look over and I just kind of go like that. And they come over and I said, hi, my name's Brad and this is Nico. Nico's a very successful financial advisor here in town. And, we were both talking the other night. We figured it was real offensive when people called us at 7, 8 o'clock at night when we're trying to have dinner and family time with our kids. So we just thought a much cooler, non-invasive approach to meet people would be to treat you to a free cup of coffee on your way to the office in the morning. Would you have an interest in Nico maybe following up with you sometime next week? Sure. The business cards were coming out left and right, man. And I think the reason largely for that, it was almost a sense of obligation. Like we weren't spending hundreds of dollars. We were probably spending $5 to treat someone to a cup of coffee. But it was so cool that they're like, sure, here's my business card. And we walked out of there after 30 minutes with a stack of business cards to CEOs, partners in law firms making 400, 800,000 bucks a year. I mean, big time people. And so when my friend who was the advisor started following up, all he had to say is, hey man, I was the dude that treated you to a cup of coffee. Oh my God, yeah, that was such a cool thing. I mean, it was like instant bond, boom, go right into the conversation. And on the tail end of that, he raised about $3 million. So it is an out of the box approach, but if you want to get in to the front door of the richest families in town, sometimes you got to think outside the box. But, it's the approach you take to meet people, kind of the what you say. Like I said earlier, man, what do you do for a living? I'm a freedom consultant, right? And it's really just about understanding that you don't want to pitch too early in the process. You really want to build that relationship and build that trust so that people now have a sense of comfort when you're trying to close them and asking them to go to that next step with you. I always say, look, do you want to go deeper with us? And that's the word that I always use. I'd like to invite you to go deeper with us. And this is what that looks like.
Brad, again, epic information. Truly appreciate this. My gears are turning, man. I already have ideas of where to go where near me. So I
Yeah.
love this. And this is useful and actionable advice that people can take today. So again, phenomenal. Now, let's shift a little bit. Maybe I've raised like 20 million and now I need to go bigger and I'm looking at family offices, but I'm intimidated. I don't know any. What are those conversations like?
It's a whole different league, man. And you really got to realize that when you're calling on groups like that, whether it's broker dealer, family offices, institutions, it's a different league. They're going to look at stuff as it relates to what I call due diligence that most just retail investors don't even think about, right? Most doctors or engineers or business owners that are writing a check for 50 or $100,000, they're not going to do a LexisNexis background check on you. But if you're trying to get $10 million from a family office, they sure the hell will, or they might. But certainly institutions like pensions and trust and insurance companies are going to look for litigations or any lawsuits filed against these people. Have they ever filed for bankruptcy in the past? So it's a much deeper level of due diligence. But, assuming that you're just a good old guy, good entrepreneur, you've had success, you want to get to that next level, the secret there is not to call them. They're very guarded. Why? Because everybody and the grandma wants to raise money in that space. So they're very guarded. You're probably never going to get through to the decision maker. So how do you work with family offices? The best way to get into the family office space is to start attending the events that they attend. So throughout the year, there are multiple events that cater to the family office industry. One of the best is run by a group out of New York called Opal, OPAL. And they have a big event every year in Newport, Rhode Island. And you got delegates, you got investment officers from some of the biggest family offices around the country, and some actually come from Europe and the Middle East. Well, imagine if you're there and you're having breakfast and you're networking and you're having cocktails, you're building relationships with these people. You're exchanging business cards. And then the follow up is much easier because now they associate you with who you are. They put a name with the face. And now the follow up is really done as it relates to what was discussed during that live event, if there's any interest. So that's how you really get into that next space. It's by attending many of the events that cater to that industry. Trade associations, the same way. I'm working with a couple of people right now in our community that have a couple hundred million in real estate, and they want to be $1 billion in 2 to 3 years. And I said, look, you're not going to get to $1 billion raising money the way you're doing. You need broker dealers. You need family offices. And so we're walking them through those processes, getting them prepared to go to that next level. But it's a different language, no doubt about it. You kind of learn how to kind of play their game, play in their space. But it's easy once you have the proper tools and once you're taught by somebody actually that's walked that path ahead of you that knows exactly what steps to take.
Ugh, completely incredible. Thank you. Yeah, so I can see value. Man, I'm ready to sign up for your program. Okay, you mentioned the variety of levels of entry, and what if I can't afford it? Do you offer financing? How does it work?
We offer financing, absolutely. Hill will finance that sucker out for 48 months, just like that car you're driving. Yeah, he partnered with a financing arm, but we don't want people to obviously become indebted. Really, what I recommend for anybody that's a listener is just reach out to us and say, look, man, I'm interested. I heard you on, Nico's show, and I'd like to have a conversation. Let's just get on a call, man. Let's get on a Zoom. Let's find out, number one, if we're a good fit. Number two, what you're trying to do. We might not be a good fit. And just really get what I call that feedback. And we'll tell you flat out, man, I don't think you're ready for this. This is what I'd recommend. Let's start here. Let's learn a lot before we run. Because we certainly don't want somebody to pay for a coaching package that, number one, overextends them financially, but just for them at where they are in their experience just doesn't make sense. They're not going to benefit from it. So what we always tell people is, look, if you really have an interest, man, start here. And as you become proficient, you can always ascend to that next level and start working one-on-one with Brad. And then if you get really good and you start raising some money and you decide you want to launch a fund, you can ascend again to that next level where we'll create all of your offering materials and all your documents for you. And what we always do is we always credit what somebody has paid in. to offset any ascension to that next level. We're never going to charge people twice. So a lot of times people will come in, they'll get a credit, they'll bump up to the next level 4, 6 months later. And then after they've worked with us for maybe 12, 18 months, they're ready to launch a fund. And at that time, we know they're ready because they have the skills. They've created the foundation for success. And then it lights out, man. Let's get that package put together. Let's get you the directory of family offices. Let's get you to the events. And from there, many of our students are letting us know that, they're having success raising tens of millions of dollars.
Excellent. Sounds good, my friend. All right. Let's do this, Brad. Let's transition to my final question, and then let's get people some form of contacting you or your team to reach out to see how they can learn more. So
Sure.
let's imagine it was 100 years from now. You have great grandchildren, and they are super excited and happy, and they want to write a book about you and your life, Brad. What would you want them to title this book?
Boy, it's a tough one. Um, uh, it's really funny because in life, I firmly believe that you need to have an understanding of why you exist. I call it your purpose. Other speakers call it your why. It's like knowing why it is you do what you do on a daily basis. And what really changed my life a few years ago is I heard somebody speak in Dallas, and his name was Matt. And he was an author. He wrote a book called Grip, but he runs 3 companies that do about 100 million a year in revenue. And he said, in the motivational space, this term purpose, finding your why, is loosely used. Most people don't have a freaking idea of why they wake up and do what they do every day. You just, I got to go to work. I got a job. I got a boss. Dude, that ain't why you're waking up, going to work every day. You got to have something inside because you will get kicked in the balls. You'll get punched in the gut. You'll be kicked in the knees. You'll fall down. You got to have something that keeps you getting back up. And he shared a story, and literally everyone in that room, there was about 150, was in tears. And I'm just going to share it because it's so emotional. He said, look, guys, 2 years ago, it was 2 days before Christmas. And my sister in law, my brother in law came over with their kids, and the girls went into the kitchen to cook the big holiday meal. And so me and my brother in law were upstairs, we're watching the Dallas Cowboys game. And in the middle of the third quarter, I noticed he had fallen asleep beside me on the couch. And so he's just there as Troy Aikman's throwing bombs, and we're winning. And all of a sudden, as we went into the fourth quarter, he said, my brother-in-law jumped out of the couch like he'd seen a ghost. He grabbed my arm. I was startled. I was like, "Are you okay, dude?" And he's, "Yeah, I think so, man." But there was sweat. Like I could tell, man, like something happened. And so I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yeah, but can I share something personal?" And he said, "Yeah, like anything, man. We're brothers." And he said he dropped his head and he said, "Matt, I want to let you know I was just diagnosed with stage 4 cancer." And Matt just, oh, yeah, like, man, that's the last thing I damn needed to hear right before Christmas, dude. Like, man, like, how bad is it? He's like, "Matt, it's pretty bad. The doctors have only given me about 6 to 8 months."
Mm,
And of course, the next question was, what does Susie say? Susie was his wife. She doesn't know. You haven't told your wife you're dying of cancer? Like, dude,
mm.
what kind of a husband are you? This is your partner in life. He said, "Matt, I just don't know what to say. You see, I totally screwed up, man. I don't have any life insurance. I didn't plan to die in my 40s like this." He said, "I just don't know what to say." And so Matt said, "Well, it's time to grow some balls and man up." And he literally grabbed his brother-in-law by the shirt and forced him to go downstairs. And as you can imagine, every emotion that we understand as humans came out, hugging, kissing, crying. And it wasn't even 6 months, 3 months later, there was a funeral and they said their goodbyes. The next day, Matt's wife came downstairs and he could tell she'd been crying as she was getting ready because her blush had all run down her face. And he said, "What's wrong, honey?" And she said, "Man, I just been thinking about my sister Susie, man. I mean, you've heard the situation they're in a couple months ago. They don't have any insurance. She might have to sell the house. She might have to go on welfare. I mean, who knows?" And he just smiled and said, "Look, man, I'm going to be at the office today. God has a way of working miracles. I know it's going to be real tough for them, but everything will work out at the end." And from the office that day, he picked up the phone, called the sister-in-law and said, "Hey, man, we've been thinking about you. How would you and the boys like to come over this weekend and we'll grill, have fun in the pool, whatever?" Sure. So they came over And at the end of the evening, he opened up the lapel to his sports coat, handed her a Hallmark gift card. And when she opened it, she broke down in tears and she said, "I cannot take this from you." He said, "Yes, you can and you will because you are my family." He said, The audience, folks, inside that was a check big enough to make sure that that woman would never have to work another day in her life, where she could stay in the home. She could provide for those kids. It was a little over $2 million. He said, "How many of you here now want to be like Rich Uncle Matt?" And everybody's hand in that fucking room just shot up. "How many of you want to be like Rich Uncle Cookie?" He said, "Folks, that's purpose. Don't do it for the Lambo. Do it to be the bedrock and the foundation for your entire family when they're in need." And that touched me. And so when I get up every day, man, I want to be the foundation that my siblings can turn to. I want to be the guy that if any of my friends ever need somebody to step in, they can turn to. And so that's what I call creating that legacy wealth where you can do good in the lives of other people. And so I think that if they had to come up with a title for my book, the title would be "He Had a Purpose."
Beautiful, Brad. Oh my god, I wanna hang out with you every single day of my life. I do. I mean, you Uncle Brad, you're the coolest, man. I that story hit me hard. There
But
was
isn't that a powerful story that just makes you realize, like, why you do what you do, man? I mean, I got a daughter,
absolutely.
she's 11. I want her to have the best things in life, and the funny thing is she was about 6, and we were just having daddy-daughter time. And just out of curiosity, I just asked her to kind of see what in her little mind she thought I did for a living. And I said, your daddy's an author. He's written a couple books, but like when your friends ask you what your daddy does for a living, what do you tell them? And she just said, "Oh, I just tell them you're famous." And I'm like, what? She's like, "Well, you've been on TV, you're on the radio, you've written 3 books, you hang out with all these celebrity people that I see on Instagram and Facebook, like Kevin Harrington and, you know, Grant Cardone." And I said to myself, in her little 6-year-old mind, her dad is famous. Now, I'm nowhere famous, but I got a long journey ahead of me. But you see, the funny thing is to have that impression on my daughter who thinks of me in that way. I'm already planting the seeds in her life to have bigger thoughts and to be thinking about bigger things because I realize that our school system is largely broken. And so I'll give you an example. Earlier this year, when I made the decision to fly to an event on a private jet I chartered, I took her to the airport and I said, "Let's check this baby out." She got in the cockpit. She's sitting there in the Citation G3. They got a little bar with all the cocktail shit. And when we got home that day, as we were talking about our vacation that year, she said, "We're going to go on that plane on our vacation, Daddy." Nice. What did I set her up for, man? But it's making her realize that there is another level in life that a lot of people just never get exposed to. I want her to be exposed to that so she starts opening up her mind to realize as a kid what she could potentially be capable of.
Excellent, man. That's how I see the world as well, and I have my daughter behind me on that in that picture.
See it?
She's
Beautiful.
6 in that picture. Thank you, and the same thing she tells me, because she people come up to me and they say, "I listened to your daddy's podcast," and she's like, "My daddy's famous." She says the same thing. It's incredible, and she also says, as she's beginning to read now, we were driving by her in our town and she saw like real estate. And she goes, "Daddy, you have the best real estate." She doesn't really know what it means yet, but she tells her friend, she says, "I tell all my friends to buy your real estate." I said, "Oh, that is phenomenal. Thank you."
Absolutely. There you go. Yep.
Cool, Brad. All right, let's get the listeners some form of contacting you.
Best way to contact me is I'm all over social media. I mean, you Google my name, it's everywhere, but just realize that my name has no E's. It's all A's. So it's www.bradblazar.com, Blazar. Go to the website. We got a contact page there, or better yet, just look me up on Instagram, Facebook, shoot me a DM, whatever. If you want an email, best email is info, at bradblazar.com. It'll come to my director of first impressions, Lisa, and we'll typically get back to you within 24, 48 hours. But like I said, man, we'd love to get on a phone call or a Zoom with anybody that has an interest, anybody that's struggling, worse, anybody that's given up just on raising capital. It's not impossible. It's just a skill. It's something that can be learned. And so we'd love to be the group that teaches you how to do it.
Oh, wonderful. Brad, thank you so much. It's been a true honor and pleasure talking with you today. I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun, and I can't wait to continue doing this. Maybe we'll do it again in a few months.
Love to, man. Absolutely. You bet.